Hello, welcome. I'm Pauline from PQW. Absolutely thrilled that you can join me for this little short lesson on some new tools that we've designed, especially for you. They're ideal if you're a beginner quilter, or if you're, there's a lot of quilters out there that I find, and I was one of those that always struggled with getting accurate points when I'd be piecing my patchwork blocks together. So I want to introduce you to a new range of templates that we're putting together. They are specifically made for piecing different blocks of different sizes and using them for Quilt as you go, because I think if you could start off very basic, number one, learn how to cut properly. Number two, learn how to piece your blocks together accurately so that you get those perfect points. Then quilt each block individually and join those blocks together into a quilt using my Quilt as you go technique. You will be thrilled with your end result. So let me introduce you to our pieced Quilt as you go quilting templates. Now in here, this set will make a 12-inch block, but you'll be able to dissect it down and make smaller blocks as we work through with you and introduce you to the whole range. And we'll do this bit by bit so that you can get a collection together and learn with us. So this little video is just about showing you how to use the tools. Now, you're going to get 5 different templates in this set. I'll talk a little bit about all the different lines and everything on them in a moment as we start cutting out. But I want you to note that on our instructions, on the sheet here that the templates are on, there is a QR code at the bottom. So what I'd like you to do is get your smartphone, put it onto camera, put it over the top of the QR code. That then will take you directly to the playlist on our YouTube channel. You will then be able to see me use these templates, which you're going to see today, but we'll be adding more and more things to it as you go. If and when you order this set of templates, you will notice that you'll get a notification to download the pattern sheet. So it'll give you lots of different patterns that you can create with this one set of templates. And we'll be introducing more into the range as we go through, so you'll be able to do the collection, add it together, and you'll be able to make any style of block you want. So let's just go through and explain a little bit about the tools that I like to use. So number one, I use the little small workboard. I love this because it's got sandpaper on here when I'm doing applique, so I can trace around it, my fabric doesn't move. This is my layout pad, so when I cut my pieces out, I can lay my block out here and the pieces don't fall off it. It's like a design wall. And then we've got our cutting mat. And then I take this to my sewing machine, so when I want to press each piece, I just simply iron. So this is my ironing surface, my cutting surface, and my applique surface. So it's a 3-in-1 board. The other thing I like to use, we'll just go over to all the tools. I like to use an awl, so when I'm piecing, this holds all of my seams together. It's my third hand. I like to use a really good quick unpick because, we've got to be a good quilter, you have to be a good reverse sewer. So a good quick unpick is really, really important. I use the little 18mm rotary cutting blade. I don't use a big cutter, and I'll explain a bit of about that when I start cutting. I want you to have a look at the video on our YouTube channel to be able to see how to use this properly, how to change the blade, how to care for it. If you're left-handed, how to change it into a left-hand cutter. It'll show you all of that. When you buy the pack of blades, you get 2 blades in each pack, so that makes it really good. I use the double fork pins to match my seams perfect, which I'll show you in a moment, and I use the titanium top stitch needles. I use them for every bit of piecing, quilting, applique that I do. I love those needles. So that's just a little bit about the tools. Now, a little bit about the templates. Let's just open this up and we'll lay them out on this grey mat so you can see what I'm talking about. Every one of the templates, you'll notice they've got grain line marks on them. So when you download the pattern sheet, it'll show you which way the grain line should lay on your fabric. So that'll all be explained in the pattern sheet you download. The little dots on the back, they are non-slip grips. So this allows the template to sit on top of the fabric so it doesn't slip as you're cutting around. These are engraved deep into the template. So that becomes the surface that stops the fabric or the template from slipping on the fabric. So you'll just see that the grain lines, we've got different grain lines because of the way it's positioned on the fabric. You never want to have a bias edge around the outside edge of your fabrics because that will give too much stretching. So this is all of the templates. But once, and they've all got a number on them, so you'll be able to refer to your pattern sheet and we'll say cut 6 of T quarter 6, and that'll be explained a little bit more as we move on and give you more lessons with this. But this is just an introduction and a little how-to lesson on using them, but we'll be making more blocks and that with you as we move forward. So let's get started with the cutting. So I'm just going to cut out a basic square from this white fabric. So you'll notice that the grain line, the straight grain can run on either of these 4 edges. So if you don't know where the grain is, just stretch your fabric. I have no stretch this way and I have a little bit of stretch this way. So I'd like to have the grain line laying across here. Now using your little blade, what I find using a big rotary cutter is that as the blade rotates, and you may notice it yourself if you've got something down and you're cutting with a big blade, you'll notice the fabric starts to move ahead of the blade, like it is with my finger there. I believe the bigger the blade, the bigger the rotation and the more distortion we get. When we use a little blade, because the rotation of the blade is so small, we get none of that build-up of fabric moving through ahead of the blade. Now, when we cut around here, when we get to a corner, just rock the blade forward because that'll get those last little threads. When we start cutting across here, rock the blade, cut. Now, you don't have to put a lot of pressure down because remember those non-slip dots are going to eliminate that slipping. Cut and down we go. So there we have, oops, I didn't rock hard enough. There we have our first piece cut. Now with the other templates, with the triangles and squares, we want to put this one down so the straight grain is laying along this edge. This is our bias edge. If I was putting this template down in one of the positions that's used on the pattern, you'll notice I've got the arrows going in both directions. So if this edge is laying on the outside of the block, I would put that on the straight grain. But if it's going to be used as a right angle triangle in the block and we want the straight grain going this way, this is how I'd put it on the straight grain. It's very, very simple, but we'll explain more about this as we work through and do some lessons with you online. So let's just cut this one out. We'll just turn the board a little bit. Now you're going to notice with the templates, we have these little angle corners. We want it to be very easy for you to match all of these corners. We don't want to have that little bit hanging over that's always a problem. Like if we took this right out to the edge, you have a very sharp point and that always becomes a problem to a lot of people when they're learning to quilt. So we've cut the corners off and I'll explain a bit more about that as we cut out some more shapes and start to show you how to sew them together. So we come across, rock at the corners, rock at the corner, come across, rock at the corner, rock again. Now I'm just going to swing this board around. I like to be always cutting away from myself so that I don't harm myself in any way. So there's our triangle cut out. So now when we put that together with another triangle, just grab one here, just press that corner out. So if I was going to be at the machine and piecing these together, right sides together, now you'll see that those cut off corners match together perfectly. So you can see they're matching there, matching there. Now the next thing I would suggest you do is when you set your machine up with your 1/4 inch foot, this is the exact 1/4 inch. So what I will need you to do is put the edge of your foot right on the edge of the template and make sure your needle sits right on that line. Because, you know, 1/4 inch feet are usually a 1/4 inch, but your needle position might be in the wrong position. So if you need to, move your needle over so it's sitting right on that line. Now when we sew down here, I wouldn't use pins, I use the awl. I'd start sewing and I keep my eye on the edge of the foot. I don't watch the needle, I watch the edge of the foot and I sew down. And then you'll get that perfect seam allowance. And if I put this template back on here, that stitching line is right on that line, so I know everything is working perfectly together. When we press this, just press your stitching line, because a lot of our threads do stretch, so I always press the stitching line on both sides. Then I press to the dark. Just open it out, gently press. The mini irons are fabulous for doing this. So just press along and you just go ahead and you make up all your components together following the instruction sheet that you've downloaded. And then you'll slowly start to build up your sections. Then you're going to make your triangles like we have here. We're going to add another square. So if we add this square, we'll add this to here and this one to here. We'd sew those two together, and you can see when we've laid these down that they meet exactly perfect to each other because we've taken the right seam allowance that our template is telling us to. We'd seam that across, we'd press it, we'd join it together, and then we make it up into units. And when you make it up into units, you can see that your points without any trouble are going to match here perfect. But when I'm sewing these seams together, like when I'm sewing across here, this is where I use the double fork pin, the twin pin. Where we've stitched across these two triangles together, we have what we call an X mark because we've stitched these two together first and then we've stitched this unit to this unit. And when we've done that and stitched up here, all the lines of stitching cross over each other, and that's called the X mark. That's where we need to be stitching when we stitch the units together. So if you use the double fork pin and you come in, the pins are very flexible, so you can squash them in as tight as you want. I don't pin right up to the edge, I come down a bit, pin, and just have the tip of the pin going through at the 1/4 inch mark. So one side of the pin is going either side of this stitching line. Now I'm right to sew across here. And when I sew across there, I'm going to get that perfect match. And then let's go up to the design wall because I've already got a block up here. And I like to use a design wall. This is just a bit of pegboard on behind here or a bit of foam, and I've put a bit of wadding over it. I like to have something like this because I can start laying out my blocks so that I know that I'm going to get all of my pieces in the right position to build up my units. And it makes it so much fun. And you can play with the blocks. There's not one way to put this block together. All of these are different sections. You can, and in the pattern sheet that you download, you'll be able to see all of the different designs that you'll be able to make up. Like we're making lots of different designs using the one set of templates. And you can play and position them anywhere you want. And you'll be absolutely thrilled with the different design elements that you will come up with. But we've got the small 1/4 and 1/2 square triangles. We've got the large 1/4 and 1/2 square triangles. The straight grain is exactly where it should be. We've got no stretching around the outside edge. You do never want to have bias here, and that's what the templates are going to allow you to do. So we'd like you to start getting the collection of our piece templates together, because it'll be amazing once we start showing you all the different things that you can do with the templates. So we'd love you to share this video with all your quilting friends. Get together and get yourself a set each and start helping each other learn by watching our videos. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and share with your friends, because we want to be able to teach you how to get these points absolutely perfect on every block you make. It's really important when you get a block made that you have your exact 1/4 inch seam here. You don't want one piece hanging out further than the other, because that's too big of a challenge when you start to join your blocks together. So making up some blocks like this, the next thing we'd do is put my backing and wadding behind it. Then we would quilt over the top. And when we do the quilting over the top, we've got a great range of quilt as you go quilting templates where you could trace the design on, iron your 3 layers together, and you'd absolutely just stitch on the line. And you'd be turning this under your needle, there'd be no free motion quilting, and then you'd be able to join these blocks together, quilt as you go. So it's a whole series of steps that we're taking you through to make you a fantastic quilter. So till we meet next time, have a great look at our website. It is www.pqw.com.au. So bye for now.